Hi, my name is Sridhar. I'm the Festival Director of Kashish Mumbai International Queer Film Festival. Today, in conversation with the director and producer and a protagonist of the film Rebel Dyke, Harry and Shan, who are the directors of the film, and also Shaban, who is a producer of the film, and Debbie Smith, who is one of the main characters. Shaban is also one of the main characters in the film. Activist and filmmaker Sonal Giani. She's a bisexual activist, and she's been at the forefront of the activism scene in India, a young emerging voice, and she's also made some brilliant documentary films. So thank you, Sonal, for agreeing to host this conversation. So over to you, Sonal.
Thank you so much, Sridhar. And I must tell the crew that it was brilliant. It was wonderful watching this film, and personally really inspiring, to get a sense of history and also feeling the importance of archiving a movement. And so it has really personally touched me, and I know it has to many people who will watch this film and have watched the film. And so I want to actually begin with Shevan, who's I know is also a queer activist and is the producer of the film. I want to begin with asking you, first of all, why did you choose the name Rebel Dykes?
Yes, it is a chosen name. We created the name to bracket together a lot of sort of outsider dykes from the 1980s. So yes, we did create it. I think the name came up originally, as it does, sitting over a pint in the pub. That's a good idea. But actually, it was the directors who shortened the name to Rebeldykes. I had some very long name, but Rebeldykes. And as soon as I think it was Shan said it, it was, yes, that's the name of this film, and everything that's gone since, it just fits. But I think it's very important to pick up on that word dykes. I think in many ways, dykes has got a lot of similarities to the word queer, in that it was always a word of insult that we reclaimed. And I think looking at the history of the word dyke, it was reclaimed really early in Western homosexual equality. So sort of like in the 70s, feminists and lesbians started reclaiming it. We think it's really important that it's a self-definition word. So if somebody wants to pick up and use the word dyke, that's important. So I guess our use of it includes trans, non-binary, cis, anybody who wants to use it. You know what I mean? I think it's got a power of a self-declaration. And funnily enough, it is a word that's still quite sort of censored, certainly in our country and in America. The word dyke is censored on Facebook. Yes. Yeah, so and we've actually had to do a campaign to even call our company Rebeldykes. So yes, good question. There's more to it than just two words.
Yes, so another thing that I've been, following from your interviews is one of the reasons for making this film was that, the history of this group and also what was happening in the movement was somewhat being left out, or it was not being recorded. What are the reasons, do you think, that, this history is not being recorded? Is it deliberate?
I think that the specific history of Rebeldykes was forgotten for a number of reasons. One, we were quite young, and two, I don't think we were considered as part of the sort of feminist dialogue at that period because we were outsiders. And also, but I think an awful lot of it is about taking our own history seriously. So these tapes did exist, this archive did exist, but very little of it survived because it was saved in people's cupboards and stuff. So I think the most important sort of message I'd give to anybody out there who's got old videos from the Indian LGBT scene or photographs or anything is this is precious. I think what's precious about archive isn't so much the archive itself, it's what it stimulates, the art that can be created out of it. And it would be an incredible thing. I mean, I have seen one film set in Mumbai called Out in Mumbai that really moved me massively. But like go back into history, go back into collect everything and keep it safe, because people like Shan and Harry then can turn it into a wonderful film.
So this is where I want to also bring in Shan, who I believe is also a professional archivist. And if you can, give us some like tips around this generally about archiving, and what would you tell a community about archiving? Because I don't think it comes naturally to us. Right now, sure, we have social media, but I don't think we are thinking of it very deliberately, you know?
Yeah, I think it is particularly quite difficult now because we're so overwhelmed with images, you know, taking pictures on social media. So it's kind of, in some ways, you don't know the value it has till you look back. So I guess it is, like Siobhan said, it is about having an awareness that, you know, these moments, like, you know, going to a protest with your friends, having fun, these moments, you don't realize how politically important they are. Like, so we did have one big challenge though, was that formal archives don't tend to gather this kind of material. Like, there is more of a movement to bring in collections, you know, from personal collections, but to actually make this film we had to set up a community group. So it was actually on Facebook, wasn't it? So it was a lot of, you know, the scanning and the digitization was actually, everyone was doing it, everyone was contributing. So it was quite community-based DIY approach to archives rather than a formalized way. And in fact, in terms of footage, we had contributions from lots of artists of the time who, like, say, created films on Super 8, so they digitized it themselves. We just, you know, bumped up the color and, you know, brought some of its luster back. But other than that, there was only about 2 or 3 videotapes, wasn't there, which we did digitize ourselves. And that was the key debate sequence in the film.
I think you said before as well, if people have got physical media, just think twice about where you're keeping it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, it sounds silly, but people don't realize this, but if you're going to don't keep your tapes in the basement, they'll get wet, that sort of thing.
Just things like that. Don't put them in, you know, where it's going to get too hot, or
And for God's sake, don't throw away your band's demo tapes. Even if you think it sounds terrible, keep them. Keep all your recordings, because someday some fun girl's going to come along and be like, have you got any more of this? And they'll be like, well, we had one tape, but no, keep your stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, that's where I want to bring Debbie in. Debbie, I want to ask you, like, I mean, you were there during those times, 80s, and now what do you think has changed? Like, do you feel that the sadomasochism, the movement, the SN scene, and the communities in London, what do you feel is contrasting or similar? What continues to be?
Interesting question, because I don't really have the answer, because I don't really go out on the scene. Even before the pandemic, I had kind of stopped going to clubs. I kind of burnt myself out in the 90s and was busy doing other things, like being an international pop star. So I didn't really get time to go to clubs, but I think there's still a healthy queer kink scene going on at the moment, certainly in the UK. Its presence is definitely online, I think. Gay men have always had a strong presence, and those clubs are still going on. But I did a little bit of internet research, and there's supposed to be a club Labris that started last September. Well, I mean, Chain Reactions was the first that I knew of back in the day, but it wasn't the last. There was Sadie Maisie's at the Lesbian Gay Centre, and Fuzi Kruger did a club called Fist later on. Both of those were mixed, and I think Susie Kruger is still doing clubs. So I think the scene is still fairly healthy today, the club scene, but I think it does skew much more towards a male thing. Although, I mean, Torture Garden, I know that's still going strong. That's always been, and I think it always will.
In India, still, I don't find there is enough support for queer artists and musicians. Very little funding, very few people, you know, wanting to support an all queer band or all women band. So I want to kind of ask you, have things changed for your country since the 80s? I'm kind of thinking back to, can we be hopeful? How did it happen, if it has happened, and if it hasn't happened, why has it not happened? You know?
Well, I think I think basically the best advice is just get out and do it yourself. Don't rely on anybody, because there was a brief time around the Riot Girl era, the early 90s, where there was a thing called queercore, and all the music mags were absolutely mad over queercore, and certain bands like Night Nurse, Sister George, Children's Hour, Huggy Bear, all of that sort of stuff was the flavour of the month for literally 4 months, something like that. And they were getting written about and getting on TV and getting record deals, but that all blew over very quickly because the next big thing came across. And that's what happens with the music industry. It's not quite so. I mean, it depends what you want, really. I mean, you could say that Lady Gaga is an example of a queer sensibility coming out on top into the mainstream. She's not herself queer, but she has a big queer following, you know. But you know, you could say that about Madonna or anyone really. But for actual queer bands, no, you won't be supported. You won't. Basically, it's best to get out, form your band, form connections and networks with like-minded people. There are loads and loads of queer musicians and artists and filmmakers and photographers. What people should do is reach out and try and form communities that can uplift and you know, support the scene in their area, really, because the mainstream may catch on to you, but it'll get bored and throw you away just as easily and quickly.
So coming back to you, Shivan, actually. So I mean, was it similar in terms of sort of making this film where it was more DIY, and what about the funding?
Oh yes, yes,
Did
yes.
you have funding support? What was happening there to pull
Yes,
this film off? I know it took 6 years, right?
Yes, this film was absolutely wholly lifted and held by the community. It took us 6 years because it took us that long to raise the funds to get to have the time really for Sian and Harry. Then not only did they direct this film, by the way, they also edited it. Harry did the animation, Sian did recreation, colour grade. So you know, they're a two-person band. They did so much. And how we did it really was by creating an organisation around these small bits of archive where we've done events, we have ran a film club, we've had crowdfunders, all of those sort of things that we've had to do really constantly. So it's been our community, you know, and that's quite wide, you know, quite global at times, have helped fund this film and also provided the archive itself. And now of our audience, it's amazing. It's beautiful.
How did you like arrive at Harry and Shan? How did they land in? What is the story behind that? How did you?
Well, so it's the whole project started off as a small oral history project because I had been a Rebel Dyke. I certainly wasn't a filmmaker, but I had been a Rebel Dyke. And I could never see our stories anywhere. And yet I knew that we were living through quite an exciting moment. It felt that at the time. People would share images on Facebook and stuff, and I'd say, well, where's the article, where's the film? And in the end I thought, well, I'm going to collect some bits of oral history and some of the archive. And I did like a little presentation that I took around the UK, you know, talking about the history of the Rebel Dykes. And then I showed it to my friend Sian, who is a filmmaker, and I said, could you shoot this and stick it on YouTube for me? And what did they say? Time for you, Sian.
It was too good to waste on a 10-minute clip of YouTube.
I bet I can't even imagine it. Like, oh, thank God.
So then Sian got me involved.
We were in a band together.
We were in like an all-women DIY noise collective, like you do. And what the first day we met, we were talking about making films.
Yeah.
Okay.
I studied film, and I was making little music videos and bits and bobs, punky little things and stuff for my own band and that. And so Sian was like, well, you're unemployed, do you want to do something? And I was like, okay.
Yeah, Harry, I want to know about you also, like the motivation, of course, your friend, but What did you feel when you are looking at the footage the first time? You know,
well, we both edited, so we had a lot of discussions about what was in and what was out, and we've got so much stuff that didn't make it into the film for various reasons. And we're making little clips, and they're going to be in the exhibition. Coming back to my motivation, I guess where I connect with the story is probably through that DIY culture and the music. But basically, Sian told me about it. I spoke to Siobhan and I went to Siobhan's presentation, and it felt like a week later we were shooting. So it was when I was sitting in the room, you know, holding the microphone, hoping the green screen didn't fall down, you know, and I'm just listening to these amazing stories and going, oh my God. And then when I was transcribing all the interviews afterwards, I was like, whoa. And then starting to make lots of connections in that way and making lots of notes and trying to work out with Sian what the narrative was going to be. So, but yeah, I just, as soon as I met, I think almost everyone we interviewed, I was like, oh my God, it's us. It's like, it's us.
So I mean, like, even the music and the animation, you mentioned that, you know, you kept the history in mind with that, all coming to that as well. What was happening to you in terms of how that sound was produced and the animation aspect of the film?
Oh, I'll start with the animation. I wasn't an animator. I was a visual artist. My practice was drawing and painting, and I've always been interested in animation, and I've made a few little tests and things. And you know, when you don't really know how to do something, you think it won't be as hard as it is. And I thought, well, we've got holes in this story, and we've also got stories in this story that we want to tell in a slightly different way, because they just struck my mind in this animated way. So I started trying to make animation. Didn't get very far, so I went and studied in the end and actually got a degree in it, and that really helped, and then came back and did it again. But I wanted to use the Rebel Dyke kind of aesthetic, you know, all the flyers and the zines and the posters to make it feel like right for the time. The music, I mean, yeah, it came off loads of tapes, it came off, you know, came from literally people's basements and things, and collecting it, and we got kindly donated some tracks from some of Debbie's bands, but it was Elliot, our composer, who took a lead in digitizing the music, and then Elliot and I worked together in post to talk about how Elliot's compositions can fit around and tell the story, but showcasing these bands, because it was like, this is a whole music scene that happened kind of before Riot Girl, and it sounded like us, and it was like, this is amazing that this has been happening, and no one's heard some of these bands. I mean, like, some of my favorite songs, some of my favorite bands, you know, come off these tapes. Siobhan wants to put a soundtrack album out, but yeah, it was.
And I think the music really works. It's very refreshing. It's very young, and it is. I think, like, it's a pleasure to watch this film. So I think it works really beautifully. And also, when you listen to the music and the bands that you mentioned, the feeling for me as a viewer was to, you know, I want to go back and find out more. And in that way, I think it is working really sort of beautifully. So I want to understand from all of you, actually, like, what has the reception of this film been like?
From our community, the reception has been overwhelmingly positive. You know, 5-star reviews, emails and messages, absolutely lovely.
Since you identify as feminists, so what is the response been from the feminist?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, and we're all feminists. I guess we are the feminist movement.
I think we've yet to see. We've yet to see. We have taken care not to be cruel. We have taken care to, yes, we've poked a little bit of fun. The only person who comes in for kind of major criticism, we've quoted her verbatim, so she can't really say anything. I don't know, they've had their say. The people who would be against the Rebel Dykes then are some people who are kind of still causing ructions within feminism in the UK now, and causing a lot of problems for transgender communities and causing a lot of problems in general, from our point of view anyway. They think we're the problem. But, you know, it's the same people. And it's just like, well, you've had your say. You wrote your books at the time that these girls were living in squats and, you know, on the streets. So I think it's about leveling that playing field. And do you know what? If they want to come for us, do your worst.
So, Shevan, I want to ask you about the Rebel Dykes history project. Can you tell the viewers a bit more what's happening there and the idea and motivation.
Yes, thank you so much for asking. Yeah, so this is a community interest company that Harry and I run, and its aim is to create intergenerational debate and community. One of the things you were asking, and one of the questions about how young people are feeling about the film, when we've shown it at events, particularly in London, some of the younger lesbians have been really isolated. You know, they have all of the things. We think that they've got lots more than perhaps we did, but actually people don't have the spaces that we have, the in real life spaces. And you can see that people are really missing that. So when we've held our events in London, people have been very, very moved by our archive. And so because of that, we've created a community interest company where we've been running events where we try to concentrate on getting younger and older queers together, but in enjoyable events. So we've had like film clubs or art group clubs or debates, all sorts of things, but it's always quite fun. I think one of the things you were talking about the film a minute ago, one of the things that people don't know about the film until they go and watch it is that it's great fun. I think because people know it's all about activism and history, that people are going to be expecting this to be quite a serious documentary, but it's not. It's great fun, and we like to carry that through into the Rebel Dyke History Project, so everything has got a real sense of love and community and fun. And as I was saying, the thing that we're building up to, the very exciting thing, is this exhibition, which has been funded by some funding from the UK government from Arts Council and Heritage Lottery. It's a very prestigious exhibition in quite central London that's being curated by Atlanta Koenig, who's Debbie's partner, and Kat Hudson. And they've, as I say, we've got 50 artists, I can't believe it myself, 50 artists, and a huge range of multimedia. There's sound pieces and photographs and quilting, and a really beautiful exhibition of dyke art. Yes, and before the interview, Sonal, you were asking whether or not this would be online, and we very much want to put a video of it online to share with everybody watching, so that you can see the range of art that's being produced.
You know, when I saw this film and seeing the scene, and I mean, it's so bold, so brave, and I can't you know, the emotions that you feel when you see the film, you are filled with goosebumps, and I can't even imagine what it must be to be, you know, in person in this space. So yeah, I just want to say that those are the things that I'm sort of thinking when I'm seeing this film, that wow, lovely. So I mean, that's the thing I want to ask you, Harry and Shan, and in fact even everybody. What is your advice to, you know, young queer people? What is your advice when it comes to sort of filmmaking and you know, about history? And I think Debbie, I would like to know from you more, because do you feel like the younger community knows enough about their history?
The film actually should go a long way to informing the young'uns about our slice of history. Because yeah, these things are not taught in schools, and they're not readily available in the mainstream media. So yeah, I think it would be it would be lovely if all young queer people could yeah, just try and ask older queer people about how their lives have progressed and how things have changed, and what they might want to see in the future. It's about intergenerational communication, really. That's the only way that our stories are really going to be told. It's sort of like going back to the olden times when everything was led by oral histories, and stories were passed down from generation to generation. Or just, you know, when I was young, I never bothered to ask the older queers. I thought I was beyond them. I thought that I was the future, and everything I was doing was what was right. I didn't really care about what happened before very much. But, you know, I now see that I was wrong. So,
I was just going to add that I guess for us, it's like meeting all of you was like having kind of it's like when you realize when you come out, you're looking for role models because there's a disconnect as a queer person who's quite isolated. And then meeting all of you, it's like there's a map, this queer map that's out there. And it's just kind of inspiring knowing that that's a life that you can live. Like, because I don't know, sometimes when you're young and queer, you can't imagine what your future could look like.
Yes, the Rebel Dykes, they kind of modeled possibilities for me. I stopped being afraid of getting older because I realized I would only become more awesome. Like, it was just like to not actually look forward to it. I can't wait till I'm 50. I can't wait till I'm 60 because I'm just going to kick so much more ass. But coming back to asking young people, you guys don't give a single monkeys about it, do you? You just do what you want. But coming back to younger people, start with what you know, start with yourself. That's the most truthful thing you can do. And there's stories, there are stories everywhere. People are inherently interested in other people, and everybody has a story to tell. If people don't want to give you money, just make it on the cheap. It doesn't have to look glossy. There can be a strength in things looking a bit scrappy and rubbish. And it might take you 5 years because you might have to work 2 jobs while you're doing it. But if you believe in your story, and also work with other people, work with people who are more talented than you, and get a really bossy producer who won't let you quit. Because I nearly quit this project so many times. And Siobhan literally dragging me, kicking and screaming back to the edit room. So get yourself a bossy old dyke and a crappy old camera.
The first thoughts that sort of came to my mind, which happens a lot with young filmmakers also, right? That you're trying to you want a certain quality in the film, or you imagine that you want to make a film a certain way, so you never get around to even making it. And I think sometimes it's also a part of your personality that you're kind of fearing judgment, and especially for queer persons, and nowadays I feel like in the film, like the feminists there were telling the community to be a certain way. I mean, sometimes I feel that we face that even now, and maybe as filmmakers we feel the need to make it our films also a certain way, right? So what's your advice to Rebel?
Well, I think one of my biggest bits of advice is that if you're feeling isolated, is to get involved with doing things. Get involved if you feel like an isolated LGBT person, and we all feel like that at times, all of us. It is a complex life to be living. So to get the community that you need, get involved with things. So get involved with activism, get involved with support groups, make art, but make art with people, get into a band. The best way to make friends and to feel a community is to make one.
And I would like to add that, I mean, at this present time, at time of recording, there's this horrendous global pandemic. And it's not actually quite so easy to go and actually physically meet people and create communities. But guys, you have the internet. It's a wonderful thing. Everything's on there. You can find pretty much, there's a lot of bad stuff, but you sift through all that. It's like what we would read books. You've got the internet. You can go on YouTube and find plenty of channels dedicated to LGBTQ history and art and entertainers and artists and all sorts of stuff. There are forums, there are websites. Just get on that computer or your phone or whatever device you're using and have a look. There's going to be a community out there. You don't necessarily have to, you may not have people near you, but there's people all over the world, and it's never been easier to find them now.
So, I mean, interestingly, in India, some of the community persons that we work with, they come from socioeconomic backgrounds where, sometimes even access to a phone is pretty sort of difficult. But I think for the rest of us, there's just no excuse. I feel like it's really about, I think for a lot of queer Indians in the beginning, there's a sort of, I would say, a denial of the sexuality for us. And you are in a confused space and you don't want to accept that you could sort of be queer, so you don't even sort of search for the word. It's only when you sort of reach a stage or a little bit of acceptance, then you know, sort of start looking out, and then you manage to reach these spaces. But I think very important points, all of you, and thank you for sort of speaking with me.
I mean, it's been a great conversation. Thank you, Sonal, for hosting such a wonderful conversation. I just had one question to Debbie. Did you feel that like any part of what you said during the shooting, okay, you finally saw it on the screen and it's, oh, I don't want to show that part of mine. Did anything like that happen to you or something? Or you're happy with the film the way you spoke and it shaped up?
I stand by every word. I mean, I was asked questions and I answered them as honestly as I could with as much memory as I could muster at the time. So yeah, I don't feel ashamed or sorry to have said anything. Did I hurt anyone's feelings? Did I libel anybody? You'd have taken that out if I had. So, oh, I did I? But no, I think it's important to just tell your story and just deal with the consequences of them, you know.
So thanks a lot, and really happy to have this conversation with the team of Rebeldykes. If you have any comments or questions for any of the team members, either the protagonist or the directors or the producer, please put it here in the YouTube video or Facebook video, and I'll make sure that they see it and answer it. And there's still one more week of Kashish still remaining. So go and get your weekend pass at mumbaicoFS.com. And please register, watch wonderful LGBTQ films, and let the rainbow flag fly high. Thank you so much for this conversation.